She thought you would be the first to break, the one who couldn't stand the silence. She imagined that you would be sitting there scrolling through old messages, fighting the urge to reach out, and finally giving in just to hear her voice again. That's what she counted on. Your emotional attachment, your need to fix things, your willingness to chase after her, even when she was the one who pulled away. But this time, something changed. You didn't chase, you didn't beg, you didn't plead. You disappeared into the kind of silence that speaks louder than any argument ever could. And now that silence is beginning to scare her because it's revealing something she never expected, that you were stronger than she thought. At first, she brushed it off. She told herself you were just playing games, trying to get a reaction. She waited for the text that never came, the call that never happened, the apology she thought you'd send just to get her attention again. Days turned into weeks, and the longer your silence lasted, the more it began to sink in. You weren't pretending you were done, and that realization hit her harder than anything else because deep down she believed she had power over you. She thought she could walk away, take a break, and you'd always be there waiting. But your silence shattered that illusion completely. What she doesn't realize is that your silence isn't about anger, it's about peace. It's about choosing not to engage in something that drains your energy. It's about realizing that love isn't proven through chasing someone who took you for granted. You learn that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and let your absence do the talking. That's when she starts feeling the weight of everything she took for granted: your time, your attention, your effort, your consistency. The same silence that once made her feel secure because she believed she could control it now makes her restless because she no longer knows where she stands in your world. She starts checking her phone more often, not because she wants to talk, but because she wants reassurance that she still matters. She looks at your social media not to see if you've posted about her, but to see if you've moved on. She wonders who you're with, what you're doing, and whether someone else now gets the same energy she once received. That uncertainty eats at her, and it's all because you chose not to react. That's the real strength, not coldness, but emotional maturity. The power to walk away from chaos and choose self respect over validation. This silence is not punishment, it's reflection. It gives her the space to see things she refused to face before. It forces her to confront the truth that she lost someone who genuinely cared. It's not about ignoring her, it's about detaching in a way that allows you to reclaim your energy. You no longer need to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it when you gave your all. That's when she begins to realize what she's lost. The silence that once made her feel dominant now makes her feel small. She wanted control, but instead she's left with emptiness. And the truth is, silence isn't just absence, it's a message. It says, I no longer need you to validate my worth. It says, I've found peace without your presence. It says, you thought I'd break, but I'm finally whole. That's what truly shakes her because now she sees that the man she thought would always chase her has grown beyond her reach. And when that realization finally sinks in, that's when she starts to miss you, not because she wants attention, but because she knows your silence means you've outgrown the version of her that took you for granted. And in that silence, you finally win, not through words, but through strength, through calm, and through the quiet confidence of a man who no longer needs to be heard to be understood. She thought silence would make her feel powerful, that pulling away would make you crumble, but what she didn't anticipate was how deeply that silence would backfire on her. At first, it felt like a game she could control. She thought, if I stop talking to him, he'll chase me. He'll be the one to break first. It gave her a sense of ego, a sense of control, because in her mind, your attention was guaranteed. But the moment you stopped reacting, everything shifted. The silence she believed would make her feel desired slowly turned into the very thing that exposed her insecurities. Because the truth is, silence is not empty, it's full of answers. And when you stopped reaching out, those answers began to echo louder than anything you could have said. At the beginning, she probably smiled at the quiet. She told herself it was proof that you cared more, that you'd eventually fold, that it was just a matter of time before you'd send that one last message saying, I miss you. But when that message never came, the confidence she felt began to fade. Suddenly, the silence that once made her feel safe started making her anxious. She began to wonder Why hasn't he texted? Is he really done? Has he moved on? Those thoughts creep in slowly, and each day that passes without a word from you makes the silence heavier. That's when her imagination starts working against her. She replays moments, overanalyzes every detail, and wonders if maybe she pushed you too far. The beauty of silence is that it doesn't just make noise, it creates contrast, it makes her compare. She starts noticing that no one else gives her the kind of energy, patience, or understanding you once did. She might go out, distract herself, even talk to others, but deep down there's a void that can't be filled because what she thought was power, pulling away to test your love, turns into realization. She begins to feel what it's like to be on the other side of neglect. And that's when the silence starts to sting. You see, emotional detachment isn't about ignoring someone out of spite. It's about rising above the emotional chaos that once controlled you. It's about recognizing that real strength doesn't come from chasing, it comes from knowing when to stop giving energy to someone who's not meeting you halfway. When you stopped responding, you sent a message that no words could convey. I've accepted what is. I'm no longer fighting for someone who doesn't value me. And that's what scares her most, that peace you found without her. Because peace is powerful, peace is magnetic. And when a man learns to be calm in her absence, she starts to crave that same calm in her own chaos. The silence becomes a mirror for her, reflecting all the mistakes she made, all the times she thought you'd never walk away. She realizes that while she was trying to prove she had control, you were actually taking yours back. The tables turned, not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing altogether. And when she senses that shift, the fear sets in. The fear that she's been replaced not by another person, but by your peace. That's what hurts her the most because once a man finds peace in silence, he becomes untouchable. So let her wonder. Let her feel the weight of her own silence because that's when she'll begin to understand what you meant to her, not through your words, not through chasing, but through the calm confidence that silence creates. And when she finally realizes that she's the one who broke first, that's when the chase truly begins. The silence you hold isn't just quiet, it's pressure. It's the kind of pressure that builds slowly, almost invisibly, until one day she feels it weighing on her chest. At first, she told herself that your distance didn't matter. She believed she was in control, that she could handle the space, that she was the one with the upper hand. But over time, something starts to shift. That silence, that calmness coming from your end starts to haunt her because deep down she realizes something she didn't expect. You're not reacting, you're not chasing, you're not begging. You've stopped playing the game she thought you'd never quit. And now she's no longer sure who's really winning. It's in the quiet moments that her mind becomes her biggest enemy. The more she tries to convince herself she's fine, the louder her thoughts get. She replays your last words, the way you walked away with composure and the way you didn't look back. She thought she could live with that image, but the longer it stays in her mind, the more it bothers her. Because what kind of man walks away that calm? What kind of man disappears without resentment or revenge? It's not indifference that scares her, it's the strength behind it. That calm silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's proof that you've mastered something most people can't, emotional control. And that control, that ability to remain unmoved, is what shakes her to her core because she was used to being chased. She was used to you explaining yourself, proving your love, fighting to be understood. But when you stop doing that, she lost her leverage suddenly. The things she used to say to get a reaction don't work anymore. The emotional strings she used to pull aren't connected to anything. And that's when she starts to feel powerless. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting her own emotional instability. The very thing she thought would break you is now breaking her. You see, silence is not just absence, it's presence. It's energy that can't be ignored. When a man learns to be silent after chaos, it's not that he stopped caring, it's that he learned to value his peace more than proving his point. That shift changes everything. Because while she's trying to make sense of your stillness, you've already made peace with it. You're no longer waiting for her to come back, no longer checking your phone, no longer asking what if. That emotional distance becomes your shield, your strength, your freedom, and that energy, calm, collected, grounded, starts pulling her back without you lifting a finger. Her curiosity turns into anxiety. She wonders if you've met someone else, if you've moved on, or if she ever even mattered. Every unanswered question fuels her desire for closure, and that's when the silence begins to consume her. Because closure doesn't come from words, it comes from self reflection. And now she's being forced to face herself, her choices, and the pain she caused. That's the hidden power of silence. It turns the tables without confrontation. It makes her feel the consequences of losing a man who stopped seeking validation and started valuing himself. She'll start looking for cracks in your armor, trying to find signs that you still care. But when she sees you're unbothered, when she realizes you've detached not just physically but emotionally, that's when the panic hits. Because now she's the one wondering, waiting, hoping. The silence she thought would prove your weakness has instead proven your strength. And nothing shakes a woman more than realizing the man she once took for granted no longer needs her approval. That's the moment the silence truly gets to her. When she realizes it's not a strategy, it's transformation. You didn't just go quiet, you evolved. And no matter what she does next, she can't undo that. There comes a point when the silence you've maintained doesn't just confuse her, it starts to scare her. Not because she's afraid of you, but because she's afraid of what your silence represents. It represents the loss of control, the end of influence, and the terrifying realization that you're no longer emotionally tied to her. In the beginning, she thought she could handle it. She assumed the silence was temporary, that sooner or later you would give in, send a message, or show up just to check on her. That's what she expected, because that's what most people do when they're emotionally attached. But when you didn't, when you remained composed and consistent in your absence, the silence became something she couldn't escape. It wasn't just quiet anymore, it was loud. It echoed through her thoughts, it replayed in her mind. It became the one thing she couldn't stop feeling. You see, silence is powerful because it leaves space for imagination, and imagination is far more intense than reality. In that silence, she starts creating stories in her head. She wonders what you're doing, who you're with, if you've moved on, or worse, if you've forgotten her entirely. The silence starts to feed her insecurities, making her question her own worth. She thought she could live without you, but now she's realizing she wasn't prepared for the version of you that walked away without looking back. That's when it hits her. You're not waiting, you're not playing games. You're truly gone, not out of spite, but out of growth, and that kind of detachment is what unsettles her the most. Every woman expects a man to react emotionally when things fall apart, anger, pleading, over explaining. That's predictable. But when you respond with silence, when you choose distance instead of drama, it throws her off completely. Because now she can't read you, she can't gauge your feelings, she can't tell if you're hurting or healing, and that uncertainty eats at her. She begins to check your social media, trying to decode your posts. She might even reach out indirectly, liking a story, asking mutual friends how you're doing, just to see if you'll notice. But when you still don't react, when you remain grounded and calm, it shifts the entire dynamic. The hunter becomes the hunted. That's the real beauty of silence. It forces her to face herself. All the noise she once used to drown out her guilt or confusion fades away, and what's left is the truth. She starts to feel the absence of your presence, not because of the words you didn't say, but because of the energy you took back. When you were around, she had power. When you left, she had space. But space isn't always freedom. Sometimes space becomes a mirror reflecting everything she tried to ignore. She begins to see how much she took your consistency for granted, how she assumed your love would always be waiting. But now, with every passing day of silence, she realizes it's not her world that's calm, it's yours. And that calmness scares her. It makes her realize you've reached a level of emotional strength she never expected. You've become untouchable, not because you stopped caring, but because you learned how to care without attachment. That's what truly draws her back in. She starts missing the stability, the comfort, the security that your presence brought. And the irony is that the very silence she once interpreted as weakness now becomes the thing that commands her attention. She'll start testing the waters, a message here, a random memory there, anything to break the silence, but you don't need to rush. You've already won by not reacting. The silence that once hurt you has now become your armor, your peace, and your power. And in that peace, she begins to realize that losing you wasn't just losing a person, It was losing a man who found his strength in letting go. When your silence begins to truly unsettle her, something deeper starts happening beneath the surface. She begins to wrestle with emotions she never thought she'd feel: guilt, confusion, regret, and most of all, fear. Not fear of you, but fear of what she's lost. In her mind, she starts replaying every moment, every conversation, every decision that led to this distance. She remembers the times you were there for her, the effort you gave, the love you showed without asking for anything in return. And now, with your absence louder than any argument, she's realizing just how much your presence meant. The silence isn't just a lack of contact anymore, it's a reminder of the emotional bond she broke and the void that's growing where you used to be. You see, what she's starting to feel is not just missing you, it's the pain of realizing that you're no longer emotionally available. When a man finally reaches the point of calm detachment, it shakes a woman on a level she can't explain. Because emotional detachment means you've taken back your power. It means you no longer depend on her validation, her attention, or her presence to feel grounded. And that's when she starts questioning everything. She begins wondering, how did he move on so easily? Did he ever love me at all? Why isn't he chasing me like before? The more she thinks, the more those questions eat at her. Because deep down, she knows you did care. But now, you care about yourself more. That shift in energy changes everything. The silence that once made her feel in control now makes her feel powerless. The same man she assumed would always be there is suddenly unreachable, not physically, but emotionally. And that's a kind of distance that words can't bridge. When you no longer react to her tests, her silence, or her games, it forces her to face her own emotions without distraction. Every time she checks her phone expecting your message and finds nothing, it stings. Every time she posts something hoping you'll notice and you don't, it bruises her ego just a little more. Over time, that ego begins to crack, revealing the truth beneath. She's the one who's hurting now. She'll start remembering the calmness in your voice, the patience in your presence, the consistency in your effort. Those things that once seemed ordinary now feel irreplaceable. And the irony is, she didn't lose you because you stopped loving her. She lost you because you finally loved yourself enough to walk away. That realization hits harder than any argument ever could, because while you're out there focusing on your peace, your goals, and your purpose, she's stuck trying to figure out how she became invisible in your world. The silence becomes a mirror that forces her to see her mistakes without you pointing them out. And that's where the power of emotional control shines. When you stop chasing, you give her space to reflect, and that reflection can be brutal. It's not just about missing your presence, it's about missing the version of herself that felt secure when she was with you. The emotional stability, the reassurance, the comfort, all gone, replaced by uncertainty. She starts to realize that your silence isn't cold or cruel, it's simply peaceful. It's the peace of a man who has stopped begging to be understood and has started focusing on understanding himself. That's the moment she starts to break down internally. The questions turn into what ifs, and the what ifs turn into regrets. What if I hadn't pushed him away? What if I had appreciated him more? Those thoughts begin to haunt her at night, in the quiet moments when no one's around to distract her. And that's when she starts to crave not your attention, but your energy, the energy of a man who's calm, composed, and completely out of her emotional reach. So don't mistake her silence for indifference. It's often a sign that your absence has finally started to do its work. Stay in your peace, stay in your lane, because when you remain unshaken and emotionally grounded, that's when she realizes the truth. You weren't the one who lost someone valuable, she was. Eventually, the silence becomes too heavy for her to ignore. It's no longer just quiet, it's a storm inside her mind. At first, she may have convinced herself that she was fine without you. She might have gone out, posted pictures, surrounded herself with distractions, and tried to prove that she was happy. But time has a way of stripping away illusions. Slowly, those moments of distraction fade and the truth starts to echo louder. She feels the loss. She begins to miss not just you, but how she felt when she was with you. The safety, the attention, the certainty, the moments when she could reach out and know you'd be there. Now, when she reaches out into the silence, there's nothing but the cold realization that you're no longer waiting on the other side. And that realization hits harder than anything else. It's in that moment she starts to see that your silence was never about punishment, It was about peace. You stopped arguing, stopped explaining, stopped chasing because you learned that love doesn't need to beg. You stopped showing up for someone who took your presence for granted. And in doing so, you showed yourself how much strength you truly have. The quiet you gave her became the mirror she couldn't escape. Every unanswered message, every unreturned call, every moment she expected you to cave, but you didn't, it all became proof that you've changed. Not just on the surface, but deeply internally, she begins to feel something she hasn't felt in a long time: uncertainty. For so long, she believed she knew you, that she could predict your reactions, that she could control the emotional rhythm between you. But now, your silence makes you unpredictable, your calmness makes you mysterious, you've become the unknown, and that draws her in far more than any desperate attempt ever could. She starts to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, what's changed inside you. That curiosity grows into anxiety, and that anxiety becomes the seed of longing. She's not just missing you anymore, she's afraid that she's lost you for good. What she doesn't realize is that while she's been overthinking your silence, you've been thriving in it, you've been building yourself back up mentally, emotionally, and even physically. The version of you that once waited for her reply now invests that time into progress, your goals, your growth, your purpose. And that transformation radiates energy that can't be faked. It's not something you post online, it's something people feel when they see you. It's calm confidence, not arrogance, not bitterness, just peace. That peace is powerful because it's the one thing she can't find in anyone else. And that's what starts to scare her the most, because now she realizes that you're not coming back out of weakness, out of love, or out of habit. You're gone, truly gone, in the best way possible. And when she feels that shift, when she senses that the man she once knew is no longer waiting, her world starts to unravel. The same silence once made her feel powerful now makes her feel powerless. She'll try to fight it. She'll reach out subtly, test your boundaries, try to get a reaction. But every time you remain centered, her need for control crumbles further. That's when she finally begins to understand your silence wasn't about ignoring her, it was about evolving beyond her. And that's the most powerful moment of all, because silence isn't empty. It's full of truth. It says everything words can't. It says, I'm not here to prove my worth. I already know it. It says, you don't get to have access to me just because you miss what I brought into your life. It says, I loved you once, but now I love myself more. That's when the tables turn completely. She starts to chase the version of you she thought would never exist without her. The strong, calm, and grounded man who doesn't need validation from anyone. So let the silence speak. Don't break it for reassurance or closure. Because the longer you remain still, the clearer everything becomes to her and to you. She'll finally see what she lost, and you'll finally see what you gained: peace, power, and self respect. And that's the moment she begins to realize that she didn't just lose your attention, she lost the kind of man she'll never replace.